So, I recently read a story about a small town that was dealing with an explosion in their squirrel population. And the squirrels, for some reason, seemed to be especially attracted to the local houses of worship, the local churches. So, the Presbyterian church, the deacons got together to discuss what to do about this sudden influx of squirrels into their space. And after much discussion and prayer and consideration, they concluded that the squirrels were predestined to be there and that they just had to accept that this was God's will. Now, at the Baptist church, the squirrels had taken a special interest in the baptistry. So the deacons met and decided that they would put a slide to the baptistry and that the squirrels could then slide down it and drown themselves. Well, unbeknownst to them, the squirrels knew instinctively how to swim and discovered it was great fun to have this slide available to them. So twice as many squirrels showed up the next week. The Methodist Church decided that they were in no position to harm any of God's creatures. So they humanely trapped all the squirrels that were in their space and let them loose near the Baptist church. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, when the Baptists took the slides down, all of the squirrels returned once again. Now, the Catholic Church came up with a very creative strategy to deal with their squirrels. They baptized all of the squirrels and consecrated them as members, and now they only show up on Easter and Christmas. The Unity Church, of course, embraced all of the squirrels with open arms, inviting them to participate in the many activities, whatever spoke to them, and they wanted to support them in any way they could on their spiritual journey. They also encouraged them to join in the fellowship after the church, announcing that in addition to their vegan and gluten-free and lactose-free snacks, they would now be serving a nice selection of nuts. Not much was heard from the Jewish synagogue. After they circumcised the first squirrel, they never saw another one. William Durant wrote in The Age of Reason, a subtle similarity exists between wisdom and humor. Both may come from seeing things in perspective. Please know that this is just a humorous way to let us know that our perspective colors the way we look at life. And we all have squirrels, we all have challenges that show up in our lives, and they can range from annoying to downright destructive at times. How we deal with them depends in large part with our own perspective, how we believe, how we think, how we feel about it. And these are shaped by the values and the culture and the families of origin in which we come from. In the series that we're starting today, I'm inviting you to join me as we explore the model of spiral dynamics as a lens to understand our own human evolution and the way that it informs and has changed our perspective over time, that lens in which we experience the world today, and how it influenced the writers of the Bible. We're going to look at both. People think in different ways. We know this, we experience this probably in this moment, maybe perhaps more so than in any other moment that we've had. Family members, coworkers, friends, neighbors might have very different worldviews and values. Countries sharing this planet seem to sometimes be in totally different worlds with their policies, with their values, and with their interests. Spiral dynamics, introduced by Dr. Claire Graves in the 1960s and later popularized and expanded by Dr. Don Beck and Christopher Cohen, offers us a framework for looking at, for understanding, for seeing the evolution of humanity. It uses a color system to help us understand these different stages from which we have evolved through. And it offers a model in which we can have a more simplified ways of having conversations and understandings about it. So, as we start today, I just want to give you a brief overview of what this model looks like. And then, as we go through the weeks, we're going to be looking at the various evolutionary colors as they're identified, and also be able to see how those showed up, especially in the old sacred writings of the Old Testament, and then begin to even look at the New Testament in light of the ways in which we are being called to see and perceive the world. It is broad. I want you to know that. And it is not one color, one person. We share all of these. But if, as you look at the model here, you see that it is a spiral that is moving upward. And even though it's moving upward, and sometimes we relate that as better, one is not better than the other. They are just different. They're different ways and different understandings and perspectives of the world. The beige at the very bottom represents our human beginnings around 250,000 years ago, when survival was the primary focus. It is what was necessary in order to get through one day to the next. It focused on warmth and food and shelter and reproduction and just staying alive. As the spiral transitions to the purple area, this is often described as a mystical time, and it began around 50,000 years ago. It was the formation of tribes, it was the discovery of fire. And in that, it was also the place where the beginnings of rituals often happened. And the rituals formed as a way to try and understand the world around them, what was happening, and keep the spirits, as they thought of it, happy to ensure safety for their group. The red phase represents the development of a strong individual, where in the purple phase it was all about the tribe. When the red emerges, it is about the individual wanting to make its stand. It's the development of the ego, and it began, they estimate, around 10,000 years ago. Humans began to focus on power and glory. They were wanting self expression, and they found that they could be masters, at least at certain levels of life. And so they went about doing what they needed to do to be masters of their own life. And in this phase, there wasn't a whole lot of guilt or remorse about the way that that happened. It was every man for himself, if you will. It was kind of the phase where it was dog eat dog. You do what you needed to do, and you know that was just the way it was. Out of this evolved the blue um, part of this spiral that started about 5,000 years ago. And this part of our evolution began to focus on trying to find meaning and order in life. It is focused on the law. This is when the law becomes an intense part of the human development. Discipline, tradition, rules became what was most important in the human system. And then the orange level of our consciousness developed around 300 years ago. And it was what valued reason and science. It's the foundation of the country that we live in now. It had its focus on mastering our environment, on making our lives more comfortable, and of pursuing our own self interest without hindrance, and in many cases without hindrance from laws and rules, and that sense of order of the whole society. It valued comfort, it valued success. Around 150 years ago, we began to develop what is described here as the green phase of our evolution. And we kind of know that now. We call this earth movement the green movement. And it had a value and shifted over the rational thinking to one that really valued everyone. It was the movement of equality. It was the movement of sharing of resources and valuing our resources and the needs of the whole versus the needs of the individual. And currently, shifts are taking place to not only move to a new level, this level of yellow and turquoise, but in many ways, what they're saying, a big leap because of what those tiers call us into being. The yellow, as we see it here, focuses on ways to integrate while living in the tension. It is that phase where you often hear me talk about both and. It's not an either or, but it's both and. How do we live in peace, but also allow the struggle of growth to be in the midst of it? It's a call to view the previous levels without judgment while claiming the best that each brings to us. In this phase, we value flexibility, spontaneity, functionality, and understand and begin to accept that change and chaos are natural. It's sort of like what Jeff was talking about this morning. We've had this human desire to want to be in control. This is the phase where we realize we're not really necessarily in control, but we can learn to live and be flexible in that space as that chaos happens around us. And the turquoise level, which is I think the highest level that we can even begin to envision, this turquoise recognizes that everything and everyone is interconnected. It is truly the place where we not just think about and talk about oneness, but we begin to live from that place where we realize that we are all one, that whatever happens for me or to me also happens to all of life. There is one collective mind, and the self is a distinct expression of it. It's holistic, it's intuitive, it is values cooperative thinking and cooperative collaboration. Now, I don't want you to, I just trying to give you a big overview of this because we're going to look at some of these and we're going to look at how they show up not only in the earliest days that the Old Testament reflects, but how they show up in the Christ consciousness, how they show up in the ways in which Jesus came to share a different perspective of what was possible. They seem to reflect, as Richard Rohr often talks about, this universal Christ, this place where we understand that it just is not in a certain culture or in a certain religion or in a certain set of people, but it is universal through all of it. This model here just shows you some of the, from a world religious perspective, what was valued in the different times of each of these different evolutions that we've experienced. In unity, we understand the Bible to be part history and a moral and spiritual teaching, and we also believe it to be a way that we can see the reflections of our own spiritual soul's evolution. We are all the players, we are all the characters. They all live within us, both the positive and the not so positive. And they are all there to support us in whatever it is that we're moving through now in our own spiritual growth, in our own challenges. And adding this lens of the colors of the spiral can add a new level of understanding, a new way, a new perspective in which we can see all that. And so as we move through this, we're going to be looking at how these different phases show up in our own lives as well as show up in the stories and the characters and the history of the Bible. So I just invite you to just be open to this. I know it's a lot to sort of take in one, so that's why we're going to go a little slower as we move through the weeks to look at a little more depth. But what I want you to hear is that it's not about one color being, again, like I said earlier, better than another, or, you know, the green is more evolved than the orange. We are all of them, and no one person is any one color versus another. We take, we are every one of those. Some are more dominant than others in our current way in which we see and understand life. And there is wisdom and there is understanding that we can take away from each one of these perspectives and expressions of life. So I invite you now to join with me, and we're going to move into a time of meditation. And I just ask that you take all that you've just heard, all this information, and see if you can't find that space within you that is supporting you in understanding where in this spectrum you may be living a good part of your life, or what colors of the rainbow you are now embodying. Perhaps it's all of them, perhaps you identify more with one or the other, and seek the wisdom that each one offers to you. So, as we take this time just to bring our attention inward, I invite you to just get comfortable where you are. Perhaps to close your outer eyes so that you may be able to focus a little more intently on your own inner world. To focus on your breath as it naturally flows in and out of your body. You know, the breath is always moving through you, even when you're not aware of it. And in that same way, the energy, the vitality, and the wisdom of God is always moving in you, even in those times when you can't quite tap into it. So, in this moment that we focus our attention, see if you can't bring your attention down to your heart space. Perhaps even being aware of your heart as it rhythmically beats in your chest. And as you breathe, imagine that your breath is actually moving in and through your heart and then back out again. The very breath of life at the very center of your being. It is in this space that we can tap into the wisdom of the ages, the wisdom and understanding of the Creator. And as you breathe into this space, allow your own divine nature to reveal to you in this moment the wisdom and understanding most needed now for you to embrace all the different aspects that have led you to this very moment, that have been part of your own evolution of growth. Just listen for a moment. It might come in words or a thought, might be an image or a feeling. Just allow it be your guide in this moment. You are in your right and perfect place, and you are always in that ever flowing spiral of growth. It has happened for millennia, just as it happens today. And we're each invited to take the very best of what those who have come before us and integrate it into the very highest vision we can hold for ourselves and for our world. This is the journey to bring that kingdom of heaven into our lives, into our communities, and into our world. We are each called to do our part in calling it forth. And as you take another deep breath, allow that breath to renew and strengthen and energize you for all that will unfold on this day and in the days to come. And to fill you with gratitude, knowing that this inner space of wisdom and of refuge is always available. You just need to focus with your intention to return. It's always waiting for us. And as you begin to bring your attention back to this time and to this space, allow that energy to spill out into this room with great joy, great promise, as we each walk this journey together, individually, collectively, and always with God. And we say thank you. Thank you, God. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. So we're all likely this rainbow, this blend of all of these levels together. No one of us is locked into a certain level, and it's certainly not something that's used or that we want to use to classify people or to judge better or worse where people are at in their own journey. They're just simply different, and they're here to support us in the different phases of our own life as we move with different values, different needs along this path. At every level, there are healthy and there are destructive expressions. And in fact, each level seems to have evolved as a way to overcome those unhealthy expressions that get experienced as those levels become more and more a part of our being. Then we rise and we grow again. Through greater understanding, we can tap into each level's wisdom, into the very best that they bring out in us and in our world collectively. And I always like to invite people to remember that a little laughter, sometimes laughing at our own selves and the way in which we stumble along this path, makes the journey much lighter. If you believe it, if you receive it, indeed, that Christ within becomes the waymaker. For the week, we are grateful for all of the ways that people continue to support this community. And for those of you who are watching via our live stream, you can certainly join in the fun of giving and go to our webpage, centerofunity.org. Go to the give page there and offer your support to this community as well as receive an affirmation. If you scroll down a little further, You'll see some different pictures. You just click on the one that speaks to you, and you will be blessed with an affirmation for this week. So, for all the good we receive in our lives and in this community, let's join together and bless it. Divine love, new blessing. All right, here we go. This one will help me because I'm more familiar with this. So, I'm the minister. I decided I could change it if I wanted to. After I keep screwing it up, it's like, well, I could just change it. Here we go. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. Yay!
We go ahead and all stand up, and we'll do our peace song together. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as our Father, family all are we. Let me walk with my family in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with
And so, as we go into this week, aware of and appreciating all the colors that are in the world and in ourselves, we go, knowing our prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God, and the presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Have a beautiful week, everyone.